so just got hit with a massive sentence. But the real shock wasn't the verdict, it was who helped put him there. His own pops hit the stand and straight up snitched. Ksoo is now facing life in prison. Let me explain what happened. The verdict shocked everyone. After all that flexing on Instagram and dropping drill songs about bodies and smoking ops, Ksoo finally had to deal with the consequences, and believe me, those consequences hit him harder than a boomerang to the head. It only took 3.5 hours, bro, that's all the time. 12 random people needed to look at the evidence and say, yeah, he definitely did it. Imagine flexing on social media like you're really about that life posting, like you're untouchable ageist. For a group of strangers to decide your future faster than you can finish a season of Power, that has to hit hard, especially when you've been sitting in county jail thinking your lawyers might pull off a miracle the prosecution didn't play. Around they painted the whole story like they were artist turning Ksoo and his co-defendant Loy Whitaker, also known as a TK Scotty and Dominique. The Barnarinto cold-blooded planners, according to them. It was like they sat down and mapped this out. Like a cookout, they even used the Duval County Clerk of Court's website test, same one your grandma uses to pay parking tickets to find the victim. Charles McCormack's address. That's some serious stalking. The evidence was heavy surveillance video. Showed a shooter chasing McCormack through Dames Point Plaza like a scene from a horror movie. But what really sealed the case was the rifle with Ksoo's fingerprints and a t-shirt with his DNA found in a stolen Nissan Altima used in the hit. That's like robbing a bank and leaving your ID behind and acting shocked when the feds show up. Not the smartest move, and it gets wilder. The state even brought up Ksoo's Instagram post saying he was flexing about the murder like it was a new chain. His defense tried to say it was just rap lyrics and artistic expression, but come on, when you post cryptic messages right after someone gets killed and you're already known for being in the streets, people are going to connect the dots. Real quick, it's like wearing a shirt that says I did it and calling it fashion. To be fair, his legal team really tried. They argued the shooter looked too skinny to be. Ksoo said witnesses described someone shorter and even used high-tech 3D imaging to back it up, but sometimes trying to fight science with more science just makes you look guiltier, like a kid with chocolate on his face standing next to an empty cookie jar. The defense even tried to blame Dominique Barner, saying he was actually the one behind the whole thing. But Barner, smart and slick, had already made a move, flipped, and took a plea deal. That cut his possible life sentence down to 20 years, honestly. That was a smart play when you're facing life in prison and someone gives you a way out just for talking. That's not even a tough choice, that's just survival kicking in. But yo, here's where this story gets absolutely bonkers. And I mean love and hip-hop level of drama. The prosecution's star witness wasn't just some random street dude or some jailhouse snitch looking for a reduced sentence. Nah, they brought in Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's own pops. Let that marinate in your brain for a hot minute. Your own father, the man who was supposed to ride for you till the wheels fall off, took the stand and pointed the finger at you for murder. Abdul Sr. didn't just testify reluctantly, neither he gave them the whole complete breakdown with extra sauce on the side. He confirmed that both his sons were down with ATK, and he even admitted to helping the shooters dip. After the fact, this man really said, I'm taking everybody down with me, and meant every word. The father's testimony was more devastating than a Category 5 hurricane because he had inside information that no regular witness could provide. He knew about the gang politics. He understood the motive behind the murder, and most importantly, he was right there during the cleanup, helping to cover up the crime. When your own blood flips on you like that, it's usually game over. It's like having your own mama testify testify that yes, you did steal that last piece of chicken from the fridge, except the chicken is a human life and the fridge is a cemetery. The trial itself got delayed many times, which honestly just made things worse for Ksoo. Originally scheduled for August 2024, it got pushed to March 2025, then finally to July 2025. That's almost a full year of sitting in county jail knowing that when your day finally come, your own father going to be on the witness stand trying to send you upstate for life. Imagine the mental torture of waiting that long, knowing exactly what's coming down the pipeline. Let's not forget that this dude is still facing another first-degree murder charge for the 2019 killing of Adrien. Lil by Gaynor Jr., who was only 16 years old when he got smoked. This case is also tied to the same ATK-KTA gang rivalry that led to Charles McCormick's murder, with Gaynor being linked to the KTA side of the beef. As of August 2025, this trial is still pending with no specific start date set, meaning Ksoo could potentially face another life sentence. The prosecution is expected to use similar evidence patterns, witness testimony, potential social media references, and Abdul Robinson Sr. is scheduled to testify against his son again in this case too. It's like Ksoo was on a killing spree trying to rack up badas for his street credibility, and now both cases are coming back to haunt him simultaneously. And what did the dude even gain from all of it? Well, definitely not money when they asked about his assets. During the trial, Ksoo admitted he only had about $1,000 to his name before getting locked up. $1,000.
How much money do you collectively have in your bank accounts? As far as you can remember, because I know you've been incarcerated for a long time.
Well, before I got locked up, I had like $1,000.
Here he was talking all that drill rap money talk, posting on Instagram like he was living like a trap lord, and homeboy was more broke than a college student during finals week. That's the realest about this whole case, all that fronting and flexing. And at the end of the day, he couldn't even afford a decent legal team without going through the public defender office when that guilty verdict dropped on July 31st, 2025. It wasn't just Ksoo who took that L that day. His family lost a son, and brother Charles McCormack's family got some justice, but their loved ones still ain't coming back. And the Jacksonville community had to face the reality that their drill rap scene was producing real-life casualties. Under Florida law first degree, murder carries a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole at his age. Gus going to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars, all because he couldn't let some bars slide. That being said, let's get into deeper details about the murder when blood turns cold, the ultimate betrayal. Now that we covered how Ksoo got his life sentence served to him on a silver platter, let's dive into the most jaw-dropping part of this whole saga. His father's testimony and Ksoo's dark motive. Abdul Robinson Sr. walking into that courtroom to testify against his own flesh and blood was probably the most shocking moment in Jacksonville legal history since they started keeping records. But before we get into how this man became the prosecution's MVP, let's break down what led to this family being ripped apart by violence, loyalty, and some seriously misguided decisions. The Robinson family was already dealing with trauma that would break most people down to their core. On January 15th, 2019, exactly 1 year before Charles McCormick got smoked, Willie Addison, who was like a son to Abdul Sr., got caught up in a drive-by shooting. But this wasn't just any regular drive-by. This was a full-blown massacre that left the entire family physically and emotionally scarred for life. Picture this scene: Fam Abdul Sr. behind the wheel, Willie Addison riding shotgun, and the back seat packed with family members, including Abdul Jr., who is Ksoo's brother Abdul Sr.'s nephew Samuel, and Tone Williams' street name, Pooh Red. They just cruising through the neighborhood, probably chopping it up and vibing, when suddenly their whole world exploded into pure chaos. Multiple shooters opened fire on their whip, turning what should have been a regular day into a living nightmare that would haunt them forever. The image of Abdul Sr. driving to the hospital while bleeding out himself, holding Willie's hand as he's making them final sounds, is some underscore That would traumatize anybody for the rest of their natural life. This dude was literally leaking his own blood, but his main concern was making sure Willie didn't pass away feeling alone. That's the type of trauma that changes a person's whole perspective on life and death, the type of underscore that stays with you forever, but the damage didn't stop with Willie's death. It was just getting started. The aftermath was just as traumatic as the shooting itself. Abdul Jr. spent 3 to 4 months laid up in the hospital, and when he finally got discharged, he had to relearn basic human functions from scratch. Walking, talking, everything had to be rebuilt from the ground up. They had to hit up Brooks Therapy, and Abdul Sr. was right there, helping his son recover from what should have been a fatal injury. But here's where the psychological damage really shows itself, and this is where it gets real. The shooting didn't just leave physical scars, it fundamentally changed who these young dudes were as human beings. And Ksoo, who wasn't even in the whip during the shooting, was dealing with his own psychological damage from watching his family get torn apart right in front of his eyes. So by the time Charles McCormick dropped that diss track about Willie, Addison, he was basically poking a family that was already dealing with severe PTSD, unresolved anger, and a thirst for revenge that had been building up for a whole year. It's like throwing a lit match into a gas station. You know exactly what's about to happen next, and it's going to be pretty... And their gang is Ksoo's motive, the fact that Charles McCormick chose to disrespect Willie. Addison in the song shows just how disconnected he was from the reality of what this family had been through. Willie wasn't just some random op who got caught slipping in the wrong neighborhood. He was a beloved family member who died in his father figure's arms while the whole family watched. Helplessly talking about him in a diss track was like spitting in the face of their collective trauma and pain. Both Ksoo and Abdul Jr. brought that diss track to their father's attention. Imagine how that conversation went down in that household. Pops this underscore talking crazy about Willie in a song after everything this family had been through after all. Therapy sessions and hospital visits and learning to walk again. Some young rapper decided to pour salt in them wounds for the sake of street credibility and social media clout. The gang dynamics in Jacksonville made this situation even more explosive than it already was. Abdul Sr. confirmed that his sons were part of a TK while Charles McCormick was affiliated with 6 Block. Two crews that absolutely despised each other with every fiber of their being. This wasn't just some beef between individuals. This was full-blown gang warfare being played out through social media and rap. Music at TK and 6 Block considered each other ops, which in street terminology means they were actively trying to harm each other whenever the opportunity presented itself. When Charles McCormick dropped that diss track, he wasn't just disrespecting Willie, he was declaring war on behalf of his whole set. When they asked who had the most desire to go after Charles McCormick because of that song, Abdul Sr. didn't even hesitate. Both of his sons were equally heated and ready for whatever. This was a father watching his kids fall deep into a cycle of revenge and violence. He knew nothing good would come from it, but by the time he realized what was happening, it was already too late. Now, let's talk about how the crime went down and how Abdul Robinson SR went from being a protective dad to becoming part of a murder cover-up. According to his own testimony, after the shooting happened, he ended up helping the shooters escape, including his own son. Imagine that a father who's already been through so much with his family suddenly finds himself driving the getaway car. After a murder, he picked up Leroy Whitaker and Dominique Barner and found out that Charles McCormick had been killed, and instead of going straight to the police, he just kept driving. That's how powerful family loyalty can be, even when it's leading you straight into disaster. Abdul SR even took the bloody clothes from the murder scene and burned them behind a Burger King like he was getting rid of trash. Not evidence from a homicide. At that point, he wasn't just a loyal dad anymore, it was helping cover up a killing. When asked why he testified, his reason was personal and heartbreaking. He talked about having serious health problems, including kidney failure and wanting to attend a daddy-daughter dance with his little girl. Imagine knowing your time might be running out and having to choose between protecting a son who made deadly choices or being there for another child who still has a future. Now the defense tried to make him look selfish. They argued that he only testified to save himself, cutting his potential 60-year sentence down to 20 years with a plea deal. And honestly, they had a point. He definitely gained something by cooperating with the state. But when you're staring at life in prison and you've got other kids who still need you, that kind of decision starts to make sense real fast. Still, the case against Ksoo wasn't just about betrayal and family drama. The prosecution had more than just Abdul SR. They also had Dominique Barnereau had already flipped and was ready to talk. Dominique Barner had already taken a plea deal. In his testimony, he admitted that he was the one who looked up Charles McCormack's address. Using the Duval County Clerk of Court's website, a chilling reminder of how easy it is to find someone's personal info online these days. Barner said he drove the stolen Nissan Altima, helped plan the ambush with military-like precision, and even witnessed Ksoo shoot McCormack after they followed him to Dames Point Plaza. The defense wasn't going to let that slide. They came at Barner hard, attacking his credibility from every angle. They called him a known paid hitman with a long history of lying to police and cutting deals anytime he got caught up in serious crimes. They pointed out that he had already admitted to lying at first and that he was still involved in another murder case. When your key witness has a past full of violence and deception, it's not hard for the defense to poke holes in his story. Now we're getting into the realest part of this whole case: how Hakeem Robinson turned from just another kid in Jacksonville into Ksoo, the self-proclaimed drill demon who thought he was untouchable in the streets. Jacksonville's drill scene didn't come out of nowhere. This whole violent image Ksoo leaned into was heavily inspired by Chicago. The Windy City basically wrote the playbook on Turning Street. Beef into viral rap hits, and ever since, drill rappers from Jacksonville to London to Brooklyn have followed that same blueprint tone that's built on destruction. One of Ksoo's biggest influences was King Von A Reddit post in the Duval County community. Even said, if you think about it, Ksoo was really the King Von of Florida. They both terrorized the streets and were drill-talking rappers. That comparison should send chills down your spine because King Von's story ended in a violent death, and Ksoo's story is heading toward life in prison. Both built their brands around being demons in the streets. They didn't just rap about it, he lived it. Ksoo wasn't just talking tough for the cameras. His songs weren't made just to entertain. They were like confessions set to beats filled with details of real violence he had been part of. Just like King Von, Ksoo used social media to taunt his enemies and brag about crimes. His Instagram turned into a place where he disrespected dead rivals and treated violent acts like they were trophies. What probably drew Ksoo to King Von was the way Von mixed storytelling with raw aggression making. It felt real to the streets. Von had this way of describing street life so vividly while still being charismatic and magnetic. People were drawn to him. That's exactly what Ksoo was aiming for with his own music. Wanted to be larger than life, someone who could demand respect through fear, with a personality that was both scary and captivating you also can't ignore. Chief Keef's influence on all of this, especially when talking about the foundation of Ksoo's whole image. Keef started Chicago drill wave and created the blueprint that every drill rapper Ksoo followed. Songs like I Don't Like and Love Sosa introduced the world to drill's dark, aggressive sound. And when Keef made fun of Lil Jojo's death on Twitter back in 2012, it showed young rappers that social media could be used to disrespect enemies and get attention. Keef's whole drill or be drilled mindset became law for upcoming rappers who felt like they had to prove they were really about that life. The pressure to match their music with real street action pushed artists like Ksoo deeper into violence. It was like being stuck in a trap where the only way to survive was to become more dangerous. Now let's talk about Ksoo's actual music, because it clearly showed where his head was at. His 2020 project, Violent Child, wasn't just an album title. It was a mission statement, a declaration of war, and in many ways, it was a reflection of his mindset. A disturbing look into someone who saw violence as part of his identity suggests someone who has been shaped by violence from a young age. Someone who sees aggression as a fundamental part of their identity rather than something to overcome that's not artistic. Expression that's psychological profiling set to music. Lyrics from Ksoo's song No Mind perfectly capture his mentality and show just how deep in the streets his head was. I know they talking about they want my head now, new chopper with a beam. It's going to air it out. These ain't metaphors or clever wordplay designed to impress hip-hop heads. This is straight up paranoia mixed with murderous intent served on a platter. Phrase, "they want my head now," shows he was living in constant fear of retaliation, while New Choa with a beam demonstrates his solution to that fear was always more violent. That line about the beam laser sight is particularly telling because it shows precision and premeditation in his thinking. This ain't pray and pray street shooting that happens in the heat of the moment. This is calculated assassination talk from someone who's thinking about how to kill people more effectively. When you're rapping about laser sights and airing it out, you ain't just trying to sound tough for the cameras and streaming platforms, you're describing exactly how you plan to handle your problems. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened to Charles McCormack, but the most chilling lyrics came from his track. Violent Child, exactly what went down with Charles McCormack at Dames Point Plaza. The victim was caught off guard, approached by a masked shooter, and executed in broad daylight like some professional hit music. Ksoo wasn't just making music for entertainment, he was previewing his upcoming crimes for anyone who cared to listen closely enough. That's some serial killer behavior disguised as artistic expression. And it's scary as hell when you really think about it. We increased the murder rate ain't a punchline or clever wordplay, it's a mission statement and a confession all wrapped up in one. This dude really stood in front of a microphone and bragged about raising Jacksonville's homicide statistics like it was something to be proud of instead of something to be ashamed of that ain't street credibility. That's admitting to being a public menace who's actively making his community more dangerous. The influence of older gangster rap icons like Tupac and NW also shaped Ksoo's approach, but he took their rebellious energy and stripped away any social consciousness or artistic depth that made their music meaningful. When Tupac made Hit 'Em Up, it was a response to being shot and feeling betrayed by former friends, who he trusted with his life. Ksoo's lifestyle was deeply intertwined with his musical persona, and that's where things get dangerous as hell when you affiliated with a KNHG No Hospital gang. And yes, that name is exactly as menacing as it sounds. You ain't just playing a character for the cameras and music. Videos you living in an environment where violence is normalized, where loyalty is measured by your willingness to commit crimes for the set, and where backing down from conflict is seen as the ultimate betrayal that could get you ostracized, or worse. Drill scene will move on without Ksoo. New artists will emerge to take his place in the rotation, and the cycle will continue, unless we make conscious efforts to break it at every level. But for Ksoo himself, the music has stopped, the cameras have turned off, and all that's left is the echo of a life sentence. And the ghost of what could have been if he had chosen differently when he had the chance. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen for more content.